Thanks very much, Fabrice, to be with us this morning. Just some questions. How critical is supply chain risk management for Agilent today?
In this period of time, not only related to the COVID, but to the market growth that we were facing, risk management is an essential part of our day-to-day job. Because if you don't know, Agilent Technology is serving laboratory, hospital, research institute, university, and experience, but also patient treatment are really depending on our capability to deliver accurately to our customer. And in our structure, supply chain start from the strategic procurement to the tactical procurement to the manufacturing and logistics. And when I mean logistics, this is both because we own our own warehouse, but also our distribution center. So we take the responsibility to deliver to the final customer. So managing the internal risk about our capability to manufacture and deliver, but also capability to deliver accurately to the final customer is essential for us. And when I mean accurately, sometimes that can be at the precise hour that we have to deliver to the customer. So understanding the internal risk and the external risk, and emphasize now with the COVID situation, is significantly critical for us.
Thank you, Fabrice. So what will be the 2 or 3 key principles that you think are really key for risk management for you?
And I think on top of knowing our job in terms of procurement, supply chain, and so on, I mean having the right competency, there is 3 factors that emerged during this crisis. First is the modelization of the risk management. The second one is the data management. And the third one, I would say, is the real-time information and decision that has to be taken.
Thank you, Fabrice, for these 3 points. Can you dig a bit in the first and second and third points? So let's start with the first one.
Yeah, if I speak first about the modelization. Actually, when we speak about risk management, as I was saying, there is internal and external factor. The difficulty is to put all information together and to have a clear vision of what are the risks we are exposed to. If I take the example at Agilent, we are managing about 2,500 suppliers worldwide. We have manufacturing sites everywhere in the world. We have 4 big distribution centers, 2 in Asia, 1 in Europe, and one in US. The important thing was to understand what kind of disruption, if I look from that angle, we could face from the supplier. That could be related to their capacity because we had an increased demand. That could be about their capability to bring simply workers in their factory because of lockdown, because of curfew, because of increased COVID case from their worker typically. That was also their capability to deliver. And you know that for medical and healthcare, there were some principles of essential service. So it's how to help them to grab the right permit and authorization to be able to ship and to deliver to our factory. So there is, just speaking about from the supplier perspective, there is a lot of information that has to be handled. And when you manage 2,500 suppliers, you cannot make it through an Excel file, simply. So the complexity was how we can set that information, all those potential information, into something which is understandable by manager who don't need to dig into all those information, but who need to have the right visualization of information to take the right decision. So this is what I mean by this modelization. And there is nothing which exists on the market, actually, a plug and play solution. So everything at Agilent has been developed internally by our data scientist team within supply chain.
Okay, so you did not take a solution from a market, you developed it. And how long did it take? Just curiosity. How long did it take? You have been leading this, who has been...
It was something like than about a month
Okay.
We were using because we are extremely connected to SAP as a set of information, gathering all the different models, the capacity of suppliers, capability to transport those kind of risks, and so on. We were gathering, and this is a little bit the data management, the second point, through ClickSense. So we have in supply chain an organization of data scientists and data analysts that are responsible to develop those interface for manager, who are responsible to take data from whatever, if it's Google or weather real time or SAP internally. So finding the right information internally and externally, and to bring them in something in this modelization, this interface, which is quite understandable, I would say, by anyone who don't know programmation on SQL or Python and this kind of stuff.
Okay, so you have a link with the second point. So let's go on the second point.
Yeah, the data management.
Data management, yeah.
Yes, is one of the most critical. I'm truly believing that our manager actually, they spend too much time on extracting and crunching data. That I used to say they spend 80% of their time understanding data, 20% of decision, and this paradigm really has to shift in the coming year. But you cannot do it by yourself. You cannot be an expert in procurement, in supply chain, and also at the same time SQL and Python. You need to bring the right competencies. So you need to bring people who understand how to find and extract data from free source, but also from internal source, and how they can extract those information. They can modelize those information and connect them together. If I take one very simple example, one of the risks for us was the spread of COVID case around the globe. So one of the modelization we had is that we had a worldwide map with our plus 2,000 suppliers. And we were looking at the number of sites that they were shipping to, or the number of warehouse, in terms of volume, but in terms of parts, but also in terms of impact on our manufacturing and our capability to ship. So the full connection. And we were superposing both at the same time the evolution of the weather, because you remember the crisis started in February, but also the expansion of the number of COVID cases, because that was helping us to understand which kind of risk we were exposed to. And when the COVID situation, the COVID virus was expanding across US, and that was something around April, May, something like last year, it was not the same everywhere. So you could not consider US as one country, but you had to consider the big city and east and eastern and central side of US to understand finally, okay, were we thinking that it will expand to California, for example, where I have a lot of suppliers. So all this modelization and risk management, this is one of the aspects about the expansion of the COVID, was really helping us to decide what to do, and not to have email and phone call with suppliers every day to understand, okay, is there any risk you will shortfall of employee, or because there will be additional COVID case and this kind of things, which is too many information to manage at the same time. So our team, the data scientists and analysis, they were taking information, internal one about the flow, size of supplier, impact on revenue, but also at the same time, external information about the spread of the COVID, typically about some lockdown situation in some country, and so on.
Okay, and this helped you in anticipating some lockdown or some.
Well, typically, if I take the example of Malaysia, where we are bringing a lot of product from Malaysia to Singapore and Penang, where we also have a factory. This country has been locked down, open up, and there was some specific authorization for suppliers who were working for company in the medical and healthcare. So there was this essential service. So when we start to see the spread of virus and the coming lockdown in Malaysia, then we were helping all the suppliers we have in Malaysia to send them the authorization, because we had the right to, that they can have the authorization and request the right permit to manufacture and to ship. from Malaysia to Singapore. That was kind of essential part of the job here. And if I take another angle, this was also the possibility for us to anticipate what we should do in terms of inventory. Should we increase that inventory? Should we ask the supplier to prepare more and more material ahead of the COVID arrival, I would say.
Okay, thanks. Great. And the third case about transportation.
That's another, and here I can move a little bit to the real-time decision and management. When the COVID started, when we start to see the crisis, we completely changed our approach with our logistics service provider. So with those DHL, KWE, FedEx, and so on. And previously, Agilent was very much concentrated, having one supplier per region. Our strategy 2 years ago was to open the panel of those suppliers, not only for a matter of competition, but to ensure that we will have the right capacity available. And we felt that there was a stringent situation on the market. So here we have changed our approach. Instead of just looking at the cost and performance of the suppliers, we have set contract based on the capacity, and we have reserved capacity with those suppliers from the early beginning. And when I say early beginning, this is the decision I took was already in February last year. We were working with the 5-6 big LSP, and we were setting contract for the next 3 or 6 months on some lanes, so from Germany to China, or from China to some location in US, some recurrent one, where we were pre-booking capacity. We knew almost what would have been the volumes. Sometimes we were above, sometimes we were lower, but at least we were reserving those. Sometimes we have lost a little bit money because we were not able to fill in the aircraft or the capacity that was available. But at no point of time, and this is what is interesting, by setting this kind of partnership, by no point we have not been able to ship in between our warehouse or to the final customer. So that we have completely reset that. And in terms of cost, because this is an important factor, we have also fixed the price per kilogram on that transport for the next 3 or 6 months. And we will allow us to revise the cost up and down, depending on the situation of the market, to stabilize a little bit our relation and to not focus on, okay, should I look for a container? Should I look for an air freight and this kind of thing, but to have a more streamlined relation. Nevertheless, and when I speak about real time, now since February last year, something like this, we have organized a team of transport leaders across the region and across the site. So every week, it was about more than 20 people in a meeting, sharing the situation, sharing about the cost, the capacity, the evolution of the market, the evolution of the different air freight company, to ensure that we could take immediately the right decision by switching a lane, for example, in between Germany to US, from this supplier to this suppliers. And we know that it takes some time. So the creation of that team, specifically focusing on the transport and logistic management, was essential to understand the risk, being able to, through this modelization, visualize the risk, then to connect with the supplier, the LSP, the logistic partner, and to take the appropriate decision. I mean, anticipating by booking capacity, switching lane in between supplier if necessary, or even, and this is something that we have enhanced at the same time, changing the transport mode. So at that period of time, we have moved a lot from air freight to ocean freight. So now we know that ocean is skyrocketing, those costs, but we have avoided quite expensive amount of spend on air freight by also moving this. All those decisions, and this is just an example of 3 of them, was enabled because we were able to visualize the data and because we had people who were really looking at the right information internally, externally, and make them understandable by us.
What's very great, and what's very interesting, I think, is your capacities of being agile. So it's a question of agility. On these 3 examples, it's a question of agility. So from agility, I mean, people, what are the key for you in terms of people to be sure you're going to be agile? So what have you been looking for? How have you been selecting the right people for being part of these teams? And so on and so forth. So do you think you need some very specific competence? You need, it's a question of leadership because you are there and people are become agile. So
but there is several things, and I think the first one was the motto or the wild card that was given by our CEO. And when our CEO, February, March last year, start to understand what was the consequence of the crisis in terms of logistic cost, in terms of capacity, the only message that we received was, you do whatever you want, you have any opportunity, you take it, but we have to serve our customer and we have to deliver to our customer. So there was no pressure on the cost, on the savings, on these kind of things. The main direction was, okay, you do whatever you need. You are free of, absolutely. If you need to spend more, absolutely. If you need to change the mode, absolutely. So that was the essential message we received. The second thing that perhaps more in terms of leadership, when we create that team, so we have organized a transport network across the globe from California to China to be sure that people can understand what was the specific situation in the country. What were the constraints? What were the legal constraints? What was the evolution of this pandemic and also the lockdown, curfew, and all these kind of things. So in terms of leadership, that was to organize that team and then to set clearly the function. So some people were focusing on how from my country I can ship to the distribution center. So I'm very much focused on my country. And at the second level, some people were purely working on the contract and long-term perspective, or long-term, I say 3 months, 6 months, and in this crisis, with those FedEx, DHL, KW, and so on. So we have very clearly specified the different roles of the people. The third thing, which is very important, it's in terms of competencies. I do believe if we have been successful in this, and we have grown in fiscal year 20 at Agilent, and it's partially because we have been able to deliver our customer. It's because our team know exactly what they have to do. Yeah, on site, the transport manager, the transport leader, they are responsible to negotiate every day. And it's not only in terms of cost. They know they have this capability to understand the balance in between. I need to serve the business. I need to serve the objective and my personal objective in terms of savings, etc. So they were able to really make the trade-off in between what is essential to serve the business, what is essential to serve our customer, and what's come to the usual KPI and focus. And basically, yes, they know very well their job and they know their supplier, they know how, yes, to manage transport. And that's a big community that usually in supply chain, we tend to forget. Logistic and transport management, we tend to delegate this quite a lot, and I can see that on the market. And because we have those competency internally, I think this is what helped us really to be successful and finally deliver, I will say, not on time, but at least 100% of our customer in this period of time. And that's continuing now because it is not the end of the crisis.
As a conclusion, any final recommendation? It was part of your recommendation or conclusion, what you said, but any other comments on?
Well, I think at the management level and mid-management level in supply chain, we have more and more to be focused on the business and the business impact. And supply chain is an essential part of it, but we need to understand how to serve differently and better the business and how to serve our customer. And all the very competency expertise in procurement, in logistics, and so on, need to be given to people who are expert. You don't need to be a super expert to manage supply chain. You need to understand the trade-off in between business and what need to be provided from supply chain. Second thing is that you need to be able to think about the modelization of the information. Here we were speaking about risk management, but that can be applied for many other different topics. And to bring the right competencies for the people who know how to manage data, those data scientists and data analysts. Our job more and more is really to connect the dots to create this internal ecosystem to really serve a business and not to be only self-focused on supply chain, procurement, or logistic as it was still some years ago. So we are much more now, I believe, COVID revealed this, business enabler more and more than only expert in shipping or buying.
Thank you very much, Fabrice, because it's a wonderful conclusion. We have been here for 30 years. This is a conclusion for the 30 next years. So thanks. It's for today, but also